this whole journey of motherhood is so intense and so new. Like, you've got to have time for yourself. You've got to, work on yourself and just try and be the best you can be, because you're going to blink, your kids will be 18, and it'll be like, what, where did I go? Like, what have I done as well? Like, I feel like we can, alongside our kids, really grow, and the happy mom is a good mom.
Hey guys, my name is Shayla. Welcome to the Hey Shayla Podcast. I went from full-time travel to full-time new COVID mom, and now I'm a mom of two. And holy wow, is motherhood and adulting a learning curve. There are so many decisions we need to make and a million ways to do it right. I created this podcast to interview some of my gurus to share their knowledge and empower you on your journey. Let me be your guinea pig and ask the questions you think everyone else knows. Here, we're a little hippie. We try to do things as naturally as possible. We're open-minded, and we don't take ourselves too seriously. But above all, we support one another and work to find what works. If you're into it, you're our people. Let's get started. All right, hey guys, welcome back to the Hey Shayla Podcast. Today, I have Sarah, and she is an Australian mother, wife, and life coach. She loves to help moms not just survive, but thrive in motherhood. I'm snapping. I love that. Sarah helps moms to achieve this by supporting them by managing their mom guilt to create more time, space, and energy for themselves and go after whatever it is they want in life. Sound like an angel? Today, we're going to talk about all of these things, but specifically mom guilt, which you say can't be removed, but rather managed. And I can't wait to get into it. If you want to find Sarah, I always like to say this in the beginning, so you don't have to listen to the whole podcast to figure it out. It is Sarah with an H, Kate at coaching. .coaching. Oh my gosh. Sarah, I like bolded H, but now it looks like your middle name, but it's Sarah Kate .coaching. Sarah with an H. Jeez. I bet you don't do that every time you say it. And then Sarah Kate coaching.com. Woof.
Oh, you're killing me.
I made it through.
Me, girl. You did.
Okay. Now I can actually talk. So that's amazing. I'm like so excited to talk to you because mom guilt is such a crazy thing in motherhood. So thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Having me. Yeah, I am yet to meet a mother who has not experienced mom guilt at some point in time. So pretty common.
Right. Well, and I feel like it comes up because, well, first let's tell us about you, because you work with mothers who are trying to achieve their goals as their coach. So I feel like that's how this came up in the first place, to be like, okay, everyone is experiencing this mom guilt. So let's talk about it and figure out how to like manage it. Right.
Correct. And then, yeah, through my own experience as well, it's come up
Totally
all the time.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me about kind of where your journey and how you got started as being a coach and how you wanted to work with moms and all that.
Yeah, so I knew that I always wanted to be in a helping profession of some sort. And so I took a very traditional academic route. When I was younger, I studied psychology at uni. I did an undergrad there. I then went on to do a master's of counseling. And all the while, I was working for a large retailer here in Australia. So I started in their stores, behind the checkout girl, and then moved into their national office and was working in the human resources department, the most, people focused, while I was, getting my studies under my belt. And I guess what happened was I got really safe and really secure in this like responsible corporate career. And I graduated with my master's of counseling, and then I just did nothing. I just stayed on this little hamster wheel until I had a huge circuit breaker known as COVID.
Weird. Never heard of it.
Yeah, I
No.
know, right? But what was interesting about it was like I didn't lose my job or any of that security, but it just really shifted my life because I was living in Melbourne at the time, which at one point in the pandemic was the most locked down city in the world. So our restrictions were so intense for so long, and it just really halted my life and everything that I knew, how everything was. And
Yeah.
it got me thinking, like, maybe there's more. because I was starting to be able to spend more time with my husband because we were obviously both locked down at home
Together.
working.
Yeah.
We had lunch together and things like that. And, I just had all this kind of extra time. I wasn't spending hours in the car every day driving. And it was just that initial thought of like maybe there's something more that got me interested. I then got pregnant, which, as you know, pregnancy in a pandemic is like a whole other experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, my husband wasn't able to be at many scans and things like that. So it was like a bit more of an isolating experience. But
Totally.
I kind of realized once I had done the Masters of Counseling and then done nothing with it, when I was reflecting on the work that I'd done and the practical side and actually being in that role, I knew it wasn't for me because I'm quite an empath and I absorb other people's energy, and that just being in that state all day of people who are at their lowest lows
Mm.
was just not right for my soul. And so I'd kind of come to that realization of why I never did anything with it, why I stayed in a safe corporate job. But then I thought, well, what can I do? And so I started learning about life coaching and how, similarly to counseling and psychology, you can help someone, but it's someone who's at a different point or a different phase in their life. It's someone who wants to have more or be more or do more. And it's a whole different vibe because it's someone who is ready for change and
Mm-hmm.
willing to change. And yeah, to be able to support and guide them on that journey is just like the biggest honor and joy.
Did you have a coach through this? Like, that's some very introspective thinking to realize I'm an empath. I probably shouldn't be helping other people who are at their lowest lows, but how can I still help people? Oh, life coaching is for people in a different, like, I think that takes a lot of like
there's
awareness.
let's fill the gap. Um, so before COVID hit, in my corporate role, there was a life coach who came to kind of speak to everyone. She came and
Mm.
held a workshop on resilience. And I remember just sitting in the room and just thinking, man, this girl is cool. Like, look at what she's doing. Like, this is amazing. And I left feeling inspired and empowered. And I just thought, oh, it's so cool. Like, you have that like limiting belief of like, but that's not for me. And I guess when COVID was happening and I was having those reflections, I thought back to her and I thought like maybe that is something. And I actually called her.
I
I
was gonna
did.
say, have you reached back
Yeah,
out to her? That's
I
amazing.
did. And I started talking to her about, life coaching. How did she get into it? What's it about? And then she was the one who suggested to me to study at this academy called the Beautiful You Academy for coaching, because that's the certification she did. So then I signed up to them, and that was a 6-month course. So I was becoming a life coach. I was growing my baby. I was still working in corporate in this crazy world of COVID. Um, and then once I went on maternity leave, I then graduated from the course. And then 2 weeks later, I gave birth to my daughter. So it was like all happening.
Oh my gosh. That's
Yeah.
wild. So then how was motherhood? How was the start of motherhood for you?
So the start was okay. So I was lucky in the timing of her birth. So she was born in between the lockdowns. And so my mum was actually able to fly down. She lived like a few states away, few-hour flight, and she was able to fly down and be there for the birth, which was super special. Her first grandchild, like it was
Oh,
just awesome.
yeah.
Um, my pregnancy in general was hard and harder than I assumed it would be. I just thought because I'm like young, fit, healthy, like I'll just get a big belly and have a glow. But that girl, that was not the case. Like
Yeah.
I had all the
Oh
things,
no.
including like gestational diabetes. So
Oh,
by the time I was ready to give birth, like she came a week early, and I was just so grateful because I was done being pregnant at
yeah.
that point.
That's so funny.
um, and my birth was great, and I was very fortunate that I had a positive experience. I also studied hypnobirthing, and I like accredit everything to that. So
Oh,
I shared my birth story on the Hypnobirthing podcast. So if anyone wants to hear that in detail, it's on there,
Oh my
which
gosh.
I love sharing because I birthed her standing up in the bathroom of the hospital. It was so cool. I pulled her out. Anyway,
What? That's
it's another
amazing.
story.
Yeah, right. No kidding.
Yeah, but I guess the start of motherhood, I was lucky in that we were still in this COVID world and my husband was home a lot. So I had his support, day and night, which was fantastic. My mum stayed for a little bit, but it was an adjustment. I feel like I was a little bit naive to the whole motherhood thing. Like I'll admit, I'm the eldest in my family. No one else in our family had really had babies or kids yet, and none of my friends had. So it was just like, holy goodness, God, what is this? Like,
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
and at the same time, the best, most amazing, incredible,
Right?
encapsulating experience. It was
It's such a
full
trip, and
on.
you're like, how am I feeling so low and so high at the same time? It's like,
Mm,
'cause it is, I mean, even if you do have people around you, like if you babysat, that's not the same as being a mom. It's
oh
not the
man.
same as being like a cousin or like to
Hmm.
be the provider of life for that creature is quite a task and just something that you
Hmm.
really cannot be prepared for.
Mm-mm. And so yeah, it was a shock.
Yeah.
And the more time that went on, so I hadn't quit my corporate job. I'd just gone on maternity leave, and my responsible plan was that I was going to, be on my mat leave, go back to work, but build up my life coaching business. And then when that was earning enough money, I was going to take the leap, quit my job, and then, do what I want to do.
Right.
But as time went on and I was becoming more and more obsessed with my daughter, I was like, how am I going to leave you? Like, how am I going to go back to this job? Like, it had to be worth it. And it wasn't going to be worth it to go back to doing what I was doing that was fine.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't going to leave her for fine. I was like,
What was your maternity leave?
so I was going to take 12 months. My employer here in Australia, our employer was going to pay for 12 weeks. Our government was going to pay like a small, amount for about 18 weeks. And then the rest I was going to
Go
not be
on.
paid. But
So
that is a lot compared to
yeah, oh yeah.
some people in America. Like it's heaps, right? So I felt like I had this year of time that I would like figure everything out.
This is a whole probably entire podcast, not even just an episode about different maternity leaves, but your
Hmm.
employer pays full payment for 12
Hmm.
weeks. The government
Hmm.
pays like, I don't know, 50% or something, like some sort
Yeah,
of,
probably about half, yeah, of
okay.
what you were earning.
For after those 12 weeks for the next 18 weeks.
Hmm.
So that's 30 weeks. Yeah.
Roughly, yeah.
Which is, I don't know how many months, whatever. And then, well, a full year is 50 something weeks. So
2
that's like,
weeks, yeah,
yeah. So
52.
that's like half the year. And then
It
the
gets
rest
you
you were
pretty
just going to do
close.
unpaid, but your job
Hmm.
is locked in.
Yes, they
Okay.
hold your position for the agreed time that you're going to be away. And then as you get a bit closer, depending on your employer, you can negotiate, returning 6 months later, or, some people want to come back earlier.
Yeah.
I was not one of those gals.
Wild.
The anxiety within me grew and grew the
Yeah.
closer I was getting to returning. And so I just knew that I wasn't meant to go back to that job.
Yeah.
And so while my daughter was like a few months old and in that phase of she was still in that phase of like sleeping a fair bit during the day.
Yeah.
That's when I was like building my website, building my business, and like getting all the things done. And I'm so
What?
glad I took that
Oh,
time
yeah. Oh, yeah.
because then it just got harder. Like
Yes. Yes.
it got harder.
100%. You're like, newborns are so hard. And they are when they're like, when you're a new mom and you're like, what is going on? As he's 9 months old right now. And I'm like, holy crap. Like you are active. You're taking little short naps. Like it's just getting to be, yeah, they get way active. So yeah, the newborn phase when you're supposed to be resting and stuff is definitely a time to get some stuff done. But
Yes.
okay. So then you started building everything and having it all go. So, so would you say that like when I became a first-time mom, it was difficult in the sense of like, yeah, it's hard being a mom, but like I had an identity crisis. I don't know. Some people I feel like just flow into it pretty well. And they're like, yep, this is what I meant to do. I like crashed and burned and then had to figure it out.
Well, I don't feel like I had that because so when I was doing the coaching course, we were learning all about, you know, what is your niche? Who are you going to help? Who's your ideal client? And I kind of had this fuzziness the whole way through of like, I don't really know who my ideal is. And then as soon as I birthed her, I was like, mums. Like I'd been a mum for 5 seconds and I was like, I'm here to help mums.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
that is kind of what had to happen for me to have that clarity. And so, yeah, once I became a mum, whilst it was still like, I'm still figuring it out every single day because you're like, it's new every single day. I kind of felt like this is what I'm meant to do, although it's still really freaking hard.
Yeah.
Really hard at times.
And everyone keeps saying it. I was talking to somebody who's like, yeah, I'm in the thick of it. I've got a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old. And I was like, what? What do you mean you're in the thick of it? I've got babies and I feel like I'm in the thick of it. And they're like, the thick of it just changes. Like it's just different things that you're in the thick of it for. I'm like, okay, good to know. Like forever.
And that's why it's so important to have support. And so for us, when we were living in Melbourne and locked down and couldn't see our families, all our families they live a few states away, we made the decision to move back. So we had to wait until borders were reopened. So we were waiting months and months and months. But we kind of had a chat and made that decision. And we've both got fantastic families and we wanted our daughter to grow up around these people that love and adore her. And, you know, we wanted that support as well. So with that came the complexity of our corporate jobs. So we were both working for the same company at this point. And my husband was like, okay, like, he's like, I think I'm gonna quit and we can move back up. And then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna quit too.
Oh my gosh. I got a great idea.
I was on maternity leave. I really didn't have to quit, but something in me felt like, you know, I'd kind of be just dragging out the inevitable. So I think he quit and then like 48 hours later I quit and then we're both like, cool, let's go move into state with a baby.
And no jobs and try and just figure it out.
Yeah.
Good.
But it did work out because, you know, we followed what we felt like we wanted and what we were meant to do. And I think there's a big thing in trusting that the universe has your back. I know you read that recently and it's so true. Yeah.
Yes. I'm reading Do Less. And the chapter I just listened, I'm listening to the chapter I listened to yesterday literally talks about that exactly. It's like, start tuning into your body. So she's like, if you're not even really sure what that means, then go say, my name is Shayla, and just see how your body feels. And it feels calm and relaxed or whatever. And then go, my name is Tiffany. And then feel the way that your body feels when it does it. Cause your body kind of just goes, that's a lie. That's not true. Yeah. So then when big things happen, she's like, so start practicing with that. Then be like, oh, am I hungry? Okay. Feel out your body. I'm going to stop because I'm done. And then when big things happen, like with your business or with a life move, you go, should we quit our jobs? And then feel that in your body. And if it feels good, it's the right move. But if you're like, should I like do something and your body kind of freaks out or panics or gets hot? And she's like, she talked about her triggers and what her body does when she does something that's not in alignment with her body. She's like, I don't do it. And we followed that and it's been great. And so literally exactly what you're talking about. You're like, yep. We both quit our jobs, moved with a baby, didn't have it, but like, that's what felt right. And it worked out. Boom.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Sometimes that voice is really annoying. Like, you know, when you just know, but you're like, oh, maybe I'll just stay safe. Maybe I'll stay comfortable, but you just,
yes.
Then nothing good happens in that place. So yeah.
Well, and I saw, this is kind of, it's not super relevant, but when I was reading through your bio, I was like, cool, psych degree. I have a psych degree. Cool. You've traveled to 20 something countries. I've traveled to 20 something countries. Oh, you're a Scorpio. So we're basically soul sisters. Seriously,
I
I'm like,
felt it.
okay, this is going to be amazing. I cannot wait to talk to her because it's
That's
just
awesome.
so similar. So, okay, now let's dive into it. The mom guilt, right?
Mm-hmm.
I saw on social media that you shared a guilt acronym. So I want to like
Mm-hmm.
go into, I don't want you to just list them out. I want to go into
Yeah.
each letter of the acronym and like
Let's
talk
go
about
deep.
them because every single one, after I read the line, I was like, ding, that makes sense to me. Yep, agree with that. Check, check, check. Yes, yes, yes. So let's talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So mum guilt it's something that we can't get rid of, basically. It's here because we love our kids more than anything in the world, and we just want the best for them. And there's been a couple of studies done on mum guilt, not heaps, but the ones that I've read, I read a really interesting one. I think it was by Collins 2021, and it compared women from different countries. I think it was like four different
Ooh.
countries, and then assessed over time their like mum guilt. And what was interesting was, although the reasons for the mum guilt varied, so some mums were going back to work quicker, some mums were ending breastfeeding sooner, some mums were, just feeling judged by those around them. The feeling remained. The feeling was constant. And there's some notions that this is actually like a biological setting within us that's designed to make us better mums because we never feel good enough.
Cool. Thank you,
Yeah, which is
biology.
like cool because it wasn't hard enough to grow and
Yeah.
carry and birth these humans. Let's
Mm-hmm.
just feel crap about it for the rest of our life too. Thanks, nature. But regardless of why it's here, it's here. And so, um, what I found to help is, this guilt acronym. And I came up with it when I was kind of in a moment myself. So my husband was working, he was going on an overseas work trip for like 3 weeks. And that was going to be the longest he'd been away from me and my daughter, who at the time was 18 months. And I was like, oh God, like I was so nervous.
Yeah.
And I had done all the things to try and prepare and set us up for success. So, I had a rotating roster of family and friends to come around, drop in, give me help and support. And um, Poppy had a couple of good nights. Like, side note, sleep has been our biggest challenge. So leading up to his trip, she had a couple of nights where she slept through, and I was like, yes, girl,
We're
your
here.
timing.
Yeah.
Like, thank you. We can sleep while dad's away, and
Yeah.
it's all going to be beautiful and
Yeah.
fine.
What was I worried about?
Exactly. Like, she's got my back. Anyway, um, the day that he left, she went off to daycare, and I did all the things around the house, filled it up with groceries, and got activities planned. And I was confident, I was feeling good.
Yeah.
And then if we fast forward, like, I don't know, 2 weeks into his trip, I'm like nearly at burnout. Like, she has not slept. Like, she stopped sleeping well basically once he left, and we were back in the throes of it. And it got to this point where, so it was very cute. He still had like the baby monitor notifications on his phone, and because he was in England, it was his day, it was my night. He could see at 2 a.m. that I was up with her, and I reached out to him at one point and just said, like, it's like, it's really hard right now, and I'm struggling. And he's like, yeah, I can see that. I was like, great.
Can
But
you?
he said to me, he was like, why don't you ask for help? And as you know, that's like one of the things I preach all day long to my clients is, ask for help, and accept help when it's offered. But, sometimes, coaches need to be coached too.
All right, we're going to take a brief break to talk about My Little Eater. When I had to feed my first daughter solids, I was like, what if she chokes? I was so fearful of her choking. Oh, I was nervous. Her course is incredible because she's like, look, we just need to feed your baby. We need to get them used to flavors and textures. I don't care if you start with an actual like baby-led weaning piece of food or if you start with purees. You can start with purees. Fine. If that helps your anxiety, great. And I was like, you are speaking my language, lady. She's actually been on my podcast to talk about choking versus gagging. And then she walks you into how to get to baby-led weaning. And I just think it's really awesome. So if you're in need of a course like that, you can go to heyshayla.com/mylittleeaterpod, and Hey Shayla will get you a discount. If any of my discount codes ever don't work, please go to heyshayla.com/codes to see if there's a change in the code. Let's get back to the show.
He said, you know, why don't you ask my mom if, you know, she'll take Poppy for a night and you can have a rest. And of course, my initial mum reaction was like, well, no, like my mother-in-law doesn't deserve a crap night's sleep. I'm not going to do that to her. It's my daughter. It's my responsibility. I'm the one parent that's here. I got to just deal with it. And then there was that part of me that was like, well, a sleep would be really nice.
Maybe that was the inner voice.
Yeah. So I was like, you know what, all I can do is ask. And so I asked her and she was like, of course, like,
yeah,
more than happy to help. And, you know, I can stay at your place so that, you know, she's in her environment and it's easier. She's like, you can come to mine. Like we'll do a house swap or whatever. And I've got 2 big dogs as well. So she was going to look after them. So I was literally going to have one night of no responsibility. And I was just going to be able to sleep. So knowing that I had that, Shayla, got me through that final week. Like I just knowing that break was coming, I had like this extra strength in the last few nights when Poppy was still waking up 3, 4, 5 times. I'm like, it's okay because I get my break is coming. And so the Friday rolled along and everything was set up. Poppy was doing fine. My mother-in-law was here and she's like, all right, like off you go have a good night. And as I was driving away, I was feeling crap. I was feeling mum guilt. I was like, what? Like, why am I leaving her? Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
As though I hadn't just crawled through the last few weeks.
Well, and I feel like during the day, you're like, is it really that? It's not really that bad. Exactly, I can do it a little bit longer. He'll be home soon. Like but had it been 2 a.m. and she had showed up and been like, hey, why don't you go take a break? You'd be like, much.
Bye.
Yeah. Exactly. But during the day, you're like, I feel, I don't know, I'm kind of caffeinated. I feel good. Like I'm awake and everything's, definitely. Okay. So keep going. Sorry.
So this was like the big moment. I was like, I have to work through this. And I kind of like worked through it. And then upon reflection of what I experienced, I came up with this acronym. So the G stands for give yourself grace. So we already know that being a mum is the hardest job ever, but then we make it harder by making ourselves feel shit and being unkind to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the things we say to ourselves, we would never say to someone else. So before you do anything else, you just need to be kind to yourself first. So give yourself some love in whatever way that feels right for you. So it could be, you know, having like some go-to affirmations of, you know, I am an amazing mum, or I deserve a break too, or whatever it is that feels right for you. And the more that you say that out loud, like you just kind of mentioned, the more it will help you feel into that feeling. But affirmations aren't for everyone. So another thing you can kind of do is flip the script. So if you imagine the situation that you're in where you're feeling this mum guilt, imagine that it's being like done to or experienced by your best friend or your sister, someone you love and care about. And then start, you know, listening to your inner dialogue. What is it saying? Oh, well, you know, gosh, I'm her mum. Like, I feel so bad because I'm abandoning her and, you know, I'm being so selfish. I don't deserve this break. If your best friend or your sister or someone you love is saying that to you, what would you say back to them? And flip the script and say it to yourself. So, no, you're an amazing mum. You deserve a break too. You're a better mum when you get a break, all those things. And so that kind of can help just bring you back in that initial moment where you just need to be kind to yourself. So G stands for give yourself grace.
I love that. And I think grace too, I mean, for me, when I am in sometimes the throes of it, grace is like, it's okay to turn on a show for a little bit. And like, cause sometimes it just gets so chaotic where I'm just like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stop fighting this because I'm like, no, not a show. And then I'm like, you know what? Let's just watch a show for a minute. And then we watch a show. And then guess what? Everyone just chills out for a little bit. And there's like different ideas about this. Like some people are like, no, my kids go off the rails when they watch a show, and my kids, and like, for me, I'm like, okay, I'm going to give myself this time. You're going to do that. I'm going to cut the vegetables for dinner, and I'm going to have some time where you're not here and like upset
and complete a task.
Yes, exactly. Or this is something I've been doing lately, which is very unlike me. I sit down and I watch the show with her.
Good on you. Yes,
what?
mum. Yeah.
Like, and you're supposed to be doing that anyway, just to like monitor what they're watching. But I don't do it to monitor what they're watching. I do it to also sit down and take a break and like not feel guilty about it. And guess what? Dinner still gets made. And guess what? Laundry still gets done. And guess what? Dishes still get done. Like all the things still get done. Or I'll do laundry while I'm watching the show with her or whatever. Like just giving yourself grace, because I feel like no other job in the world, sorry, I'm just kind of running with this, but no other job in the world is they're just going to throw you in and be like, hey, we didn't give you any training. You've never done this before. You've seen other people do it. You got it.
Yeah. And you might get a lunch break, but you might not. But I can't tell you when that is either. So have fun.
And you might I know, but it's like, there's no training. There's no anything. You can do some like research on your own, listen to podcasts, read some books, do this, do that. But like, there's nothing to prepare you for it. And you're just supposed to know how to do it. And when you do it wrong, or you like make a mistake, which newsflash, we all are, and we all will, and it's fine.
Yeah.
Like, then you're hard on yourself. And I think that I'm kind of going through this weird, like internal thing lately, but like you have to turn inward and you have to follow your instincts. And for me, it's difficult because my instincts are not necessarily coherent with society. And I think that's where a lot of the problems come. Because like some people feel mom guilt for co-sleeping. Some people feel mom guilt for not doing baby-led weaning. Some people, and like, what is your guilt? I don't know. I don't know. That's my long tangent on that. So giving yourself grace for something that you've never been trained to do and are asked to do 24/7. It's kind of necessary.
Yeah. And it feels weird at first, but the more you do it, the more you can be kind to yourself, the more you can tap into that a bit quicker. So yeah, I always like to start with that. Just give yourself grace.
Absolutely.
And then we can start getting a bit logical. So U stands for understand your why. So behind every decision we make as mums, and we make thousands a day, there's a reason or reasons why. And sometimes the logic of that reason can be squashed or completely stifled by these intense feelings of mum guilt. They're so heavy, right? So just coming back to your why, remembering your why, speaking it, writing it, whatever you need to do to get it out there, can be a really powerful tool to kind of bring you back. And so for me in that moment, my why was, I'm at burnout point. I need to refill my cup so that I can be the best mum I can be, for my husband to then come home in a few days, because I also knew that he was coming home with COVID. So I was like, one of us needs to be good. So how about it be me? I need to keep going.
Oh my gosh. Hey, here's your finish line. Nope. We're just going to extend it another few miles. Okay.
I needed to anchor into that why.
Totally. So what would you say your why is?
So what was my why for, like, well, this is the thing, like your why can change moment to moment, right?
Okay, yeah.
So you can have a big why of, why am I mum? Why am I here? Why am I doing this? Or you can have, why am I dropping her at daycare? Because I need to work, or I want to work, or I want a day to myself, or like anchoring back into that why, owning it, that can really help. So you is understand your why. Remind yourself of that.
And I've talked with a friend of mine about the why. And a lot of times, sometimes the why is a conditioned why, where it's like, telling them, like TV. She's like, my kid wanted to watch TV after daycare, and I just was a hard no. And then my partner was like, why can't she watch TV after daycare? Like after a long day at work, I want to sit down and do nothing and watch TV. And she was like, I don't know. Like, just because that's what I decided a long time ago. Or like, I'm unloading the dishwashers. Don't touch the dishes. Get away. Don't touch the dishes. I'm unloading them. Is it a safety reason? Is it because you want to do it by yourself? Or like, can they help you? And like questioning the why behind these things that you're doing, and deciding like, maybe we can do that. Maybe I'm just saying no because I'm just conditioned to be like, no, you can't do that. Instead of really
Yeah.
understanding why I don't want them to do that or why I'm allowing them to do that. Or when you have a discrepancy with your spouse and it's like, they're like, oh yeah, you can do this. And you're like, no, we're not going to have candy at 8 p.m. We're trying to go to bed here. Like, what? No, I don't even care about the energy. We got cavities that we got to, you know what I mean? Just like
Yeah.
understanding. I think I love that, the understanding your why, and same thing with, like you're saying, dropping them off. My why I want to do work online is that I want to be home with them as much as that I can.
Exactly.
So I'm loving these acronyms. So thanks
Great.
for your burnout epiphany.
You are welcome. Look,
Yes.
some good came from it. So,
okay, let's go to I.
oh my gosh. So I stands for, what does I stand for?
Identify your triggers.
Yes. So identify your triggers. So when are you feeling mum guilt? Is it in a certain place? Is it at a certain time? Is it during a certain routine, like drop off of daycare? Really understanding when you feel this most can be powerful, because you can then kind of get ahead and you can bolster yourself up with some kindness before you go into these situations. You can remind yourself of your why before you get there, before those feelings really take hold. So I like to just, put that out there as like, identify when mum guilt's going to come up before it does, if you can. So like, just take notice throughout the week. When's it coming up? Oh, that's interesting. Like, notate it down. And then after a week, you can kind of see a pattern, and figure out when this is happening for you. And the other thing I like to say on this point of identify your triggers is, who are you around when you feel the most mum guilt? Because sometimes there are people in our life who might mean well, or they might just be someone that is in our energy and we feel like a crap mum around them. So I would invite people to consider that, and then understand if there's any like healthy boundaries they can put in place, or can they get rid of that person from their life, completely. If you can, great. That's the ultimate. If you can't, if there's like a shared bloodline, or like they're your boss or something, then boundaries are kind of the only way to manage that. But there are enough natural organic triggers of mum guilt in the world. We don't need people adding to that. So do you know off the top of your head, Shayla, any triggers that you have for mum guilt?
Yep. Sleep is mine. If I don't get, and like, I get broken sleep, but if I go to bed late and they wake up early, multiple days, I can usually ride out like a day or two. But if I'm on day 3 or 4, I am not okay. I am like short-tempered. And it's not fair, but so that, yes, sleep is mine. What's yours?
So mine is fun. Mine is leaving my daughter in the care of someone else when I'm not going to earn money while doing it. So it's very complex. It's a fun one, but I have a thing whereby, like, if I'm taking time just for me and I'm not like, earning money while being away from her, the mum guilt comes up. So that's something I'm working on internally, and it's taking a bit of time to shift around, what is this weird value thing I have with money and my self-worth and all of that, and it justifying having time away from her. And when I think back, it's like, the whole reason why this business started, right, was like, well, I need to earn money, and I'm not going to go back to this corporate job that's crap, that isn't lighting my soul on fire. So I'm going to create this business that I love and help people that I want to help. And I think there's layers within that, of these beliefs that I'm working through. But so taking time, if there's like a day where she's at daycare and I don't have any clients, those are tricky days for me, because then I'm, doing things. I might do something for myself, I might get a sneaky massage, and then I'm like, oh, what are you doing?
Funny. Okay, so work through that. Like, how do you kind of prep yourself for drop off, or like what are you doing to manage that?
I work on the kindness, that's the initial thing I will say to myself, I'm going to have this day. So like, one's coming up this coming Tuesday, actually, my daughter will be in daycare, and I've said that I will help my sister like drop her car off somewhere. And I was like, we should also go do breakfast and I'll go check out your new house. She's like building a house, and then these like feelings started bubbling up, like, what are you doing, Sarah? Like, what are you gonna do on that day? Like, how are you gonna hustle? And I was like, no, 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 no. So like I literally am telling myself every day in the lead up, like, it's gonna be a great day. I deserve this day. You know, I'm gonna spend the day with my sister and we don't get a lot of one-on-one time. Like, and I'm just, as those negative thoughts come up, I'm changing them with a positive. And they keep coming up and I keep having to change them. And I think the more that I have days like this and I do things for me, the more I will get used to it, but it's taking time.
You need to read Do Less.
Do less. Okay. That'll be next. Yeah.
She literally talks about this, and it's not just like do less. She talks about how women specifically go through cycles and how like masculine energy is linear and feminine energy is cyclical. And so not only just like our cycles of like menstrual cycles, but like she's like, imagine the day as a big circle instead of like a linear thing. And she has this chart, and she says in the book that like when women see it, they just kind of relax. And I did when I looked at this chart.
Oh, that's so cool.
And I saw that like the day was a circle. I was like, oh, if whatever happens today, we just start again tomorrow. No big deal. And she said that, sorry, I'm going to do a little summary here, but
Go for it.
she talks about how you follow your cycle and it's in 4 different phases, right? So you get your period and then you have ovulation, but then even like the 2 halves are cut into 2 separate ones. And she's like, if you start tracking this, and you'll notice like there'll be 1 week, and I haven't figured out, I need to reread that part, re-listen to that part about like when is each cycle, but like 1 week is like a rest week where you should be doing like stretching instead of a HIIT class or a cycle class. And you should just be like laying low. You should be reading and introspective. Then there's one where you should be like creating ideas. Then there's one where you should be like pitching and going out and like putting them into motion. And it just talks about how you need that like downtime to have that uptime. Otherwise, like basically just working with your feminine energy instead of just like harnessing that masculine energy of just like push through. And I
love that.
It's wild. It's wild to me. And so I've been trying to like slow down a lot. And all of a sudden, like the last couple of days, boom, like I just have like, I've got content ideas coming up and I've got all this like creative stuff. And I need to look at my cycle thing to figure out where I am in the thing, because I'm probably just right on track for what it's supposed to be, but it's just it's kind of wild. And then she's like, if you're breastfeeding or you're like, you don't get a cycle, then you follow the moon. It's woo woo, but I'm loving it. Yeah. So
you know what this is making me think of, which is something I'm just starting to learn more about. So I'm in no ways an expert. I'm just a very interested novice at this stage, but have you heard much about human design?
Yes, I've heard. I don't know anything about it either, but I've definitely heard a little bit about it.
Very cool. So it's very similar to like, you know, your horoscopes, but it's based on like the date and time you were born and the place.
Yes.
And so you can't fake this. It's you are what you are sort of thing. But it talks about 5 different energy types and how these different energy types are like people experience like input and output of energy differently throughout the world. And what's interesting is that my energy type, which is a projector, is only meant to work 2 to 4 hours a day optimally, which I can get on board with.
Right. Yeah. You're like, yeah, okay, that sounds like me, sure. But it's not because you need. Yeah.
My energy type doesn't actually create its own energy. I like absorb it from others. Whereas there's an energy type called a generator, and they are just like powerhouses in this world, and they give off so much energy. And when they are working on something they love or living their life in alignment, they can, you know, work for hours in flow on this one thing, and they give this great energy to those around them. So my understanding is, you know, the more people that understand their human design and live in alignment, like the whole world will literally change. So I'm trying to learn more about this, because I think especially as mums too, knowing what our energy type is and what we need, what helps us feel in control and how we see the world and how we make decisions is like super powerful stuff.
Absolutely.
So learning more about that, which is cool.
And just to know like that, and also the like flow thing, like our hormones are doing different things. Our energy is doing different things throughout the month. And if we aren't even aware of that, then
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we're just like, gosh, I'm so tired. I'm so bloated. I'm so like
Mm-hmm.
hormonal today. What is going on? And then if you're like, oh, I'm in week 2, of course that's what's going on. Like, then it just
Mm-hmm.
like makes it all make sense. We're going to take a brief break to talk about Tush Baby. Tush Baby is one of those things that you're like, is this a gimmick? Is this something that I'm going to use? I love it. I love it. It's like, it goes around your waist and it's a little seat and you just plop your kid on there and plop them off. It works for babies as soon as they can hold themselves up. It's fantastic for the up down phases because you're like, I'm going to put them in the carrier. And then they're like squirmy and they want to get out. And you're like, what? So I wear it around the house. And so when I'm cooking, then they can come up by me and then they can go down when they want. I love it for Target because she doesn't want to sit in the cart. She doesn't want, but she sits on this thing. They can face out or they can face in. It also has little like pockets for my phone or my keys or receipts or whatever. So if you're interested, you can go to heyshayla.com/tushbabypod, POD. Let's get back to the show.
And with like motherhood too, like I was breastfeeding until 20 months and I stopped because like I got my period back at 14 months, and then between 14 and 20 months it was just absolute chaos. Like it would come every 2 weeks, or I would bleed for 2 weeks, or I had like one like 53-day cycle. Like it was just
Wild.
insane.
Yeah.
And I went to the doctors and like got bloods done and stuff, and she was like, really, like while you're still breastfeeding there's still these hormones going on, we can't really like tell what's going on. So that was like part of my reason for stopping breastfeeding, was to try and like regulate my hormones again. And
Yeah.
the guilt I felt for that is like, I'm stopping for me. Like she'd be happy to keep going, I'm sure. Like
Yeah.
I wonder now like how long she would have gone, but
Yeah.
that like I had to work through that guilt too.
It's just crazy. And I mean, it makes sense to me that it's biological. Like you just want the best for your kids, but then that's like for the cave women who need to be doing all the things. Like we have all of this information overload with social media that's
Mm-hmm.
telling us all the things that we need to be doing. And I feel like that is causing a lot of stress as well with all the mom guilt.
Definitely. It's the constant comparison, and other women look like they've got it all together and they've got the perfect kids, and it's like it's just not real. It's just not helpful to see that stuff.
No,
So
definitely not. And that's something I was thinking about lately. I feel like people, they watch movies and know that movies are not real and that these people are
mm-hmm.
acting and doing these things, but they don't apply the same logic to social media because people, I'm not going to show my kid having a tantrum. I'm not going to do that
No.
to my kid. Not even just because
Mm.
who's going to pull out their phone and be like, look it,
It,
I'm having a really hard day. My kid is just crying in front of me. Like, no, you're going to
yeah.
comfort your child. You're not going to blast them on
Mm-hmm.
social media or like crying on, I don't know. Some people do it and I think that's good to show transparency, but like you're not
It's
going to
not your
show
first thought in that moment as well. You're just
no.
like, okay, how do I deal with this? Like,
Yeah. And it's
yeah.
yeah, it's not always just like, well, I can't let people know that I struggle too. It's like, no, I'm not going to broadcast this on whatever that this is going on. But people don't realize that like I don't know, whatever. That's a whole nother thing. Let's
It
go to
is.
the
It really
L
is.
of guilt.
L. L is my favorite. So
Ooh.
L stands for look for the good. So in every situation or scenario where mum guilt is rearing her ugly head, there is some good to be found. Sometimes you've got to look really, really, really hard. But other times there's good, and there's an abundance of good, and there's a good for all parties involved. So for my situation where I was, leaving my daughter in the care of her grandmother and her grandfather when he finished work, like there was so much good in that. So like I was going to get a break, I was going to get refreshed and reset. She was going to have so much fun with her grandparents. She gets to do all these fun things that we don't necessarily do, all these like messy creative things. um and then like for them it was like extra time, especially for her grandfather. Like he works a lot, and this was like a bonus night that he was going to get to have with her.
Yeah.
So there was so much good in that situation, and yet my initial feeling was bad.
It's so what would you say is the definition of mom guilt?
Mm. The feeling of not knowing, being, or doing enough for your child.
Was that off the cuff?
Kind of. I've been playing around with it, trying to figure
Yeah.
out what is this feeling,
Right.
and that's kind of what I think it boils down to. I think there's layers and complexities and variations for everyone. But I think when it comes down to it's that feeling of not being enough, essentially,
Yeah,
or doing enough, knowing enough, or doing the right thing, the right
right.
thing. Yeah. Mm.
I think that's a good definition, because I'm thinking of even just like the study you said, like they're like, oh, they studied mom
Mhm.
guilt. I'm like, how? I feel like
Mm.
that's so subjective of like, I don't know. It's not like we can
Mm.
do a blood test and be like, whoa, you've got a lot of mom guilt in you. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, it's
Mhm.
everyone has it, but it does come in different forms. And I
Yeah.
think I have a friend who she's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't really prescribe to the mom guilt. I'm like, really?
That's interesting.
Tell me about this. And she has a nanny, like a full-time nanny, because she works a full-time job. And she's like, I think it's great that my kid is like comfortable in different situations, gets to play with different
Mhm.
people, and she like really focuses on the good. And I'm like, that
Mm.
is a great perspective. Challenging for
Mhm.
sure, because holy cow, but good on you that you can like think like that, I guess.
Yeah. I wonder for her whether the feeling comes up, but she's so good at reframing now that it's like a half a millisecond and she doesn't even notice it because she's
Hmm.
got these really strong ties to her why and to, all of those things.
Or if
That's
she's
so
just in
cool.
total denial.
Well, that too. She could be living in a dreamland, which
No,
wouldn't be
she's my
bad half
friend.
the
She's a really
time.
positive person. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a good point. And I, yeah, reframing when it comes up, I like that. And sometimes it is hard to do, but just figuring that out. Yeah, because I feel like when you do things just for yourself, then you're like, oh, I'm not doing the thing for I had a friend who had to stop breastfeeding early. I mean, early. It was a NICU baby. Her baby was in the NICU. She tried so hard. And I feel like at, I don't know, maybe 12 weeks, she was like, I've got postpartum depression, anxiety. I know with my other
Mhm.
3 babies, when I stopped breastfeeding, that all went away. Da, 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 but I can't, I'm doing the
Mhm.
best thing for my baby and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, it sounds like the best thing for your baby is to have a mom who's happy. And the best thing for your other 3 children is to have a mom that's happy and like not crying and not
Totally.
doing all these things. And like, yes, breastfeeding is fantastic. It's great for your baby, but like happy mom for all of your children, I think might trump that. And she's like, oh my gosh, I
Yes.
never thought about framing it like that. I just thought about how I was
Mhm.
being selfish. And I was like, it's selfless to stop breastfeeding, something that you want so badly, but you're going to choose to not do it for the sake of
Mhm.
everyone.
Yeah.
But it's
The
hard.
whole it's cliched, but the oxygen mask analogy,
Yeah.
put your mask on first before you help others. Like it's just, yeah, we can't pour from an empty cup. All these things we hear them, and then like it's really hard in the moment to remind yourself of that and to feel into that. But the more you do it, um, the more you can, yeah, be kind to yourself.
Yeah. And I feel when I leave, I don't leave very often, but when I leave and I miss my kids.
Mhm.
Like I don't know that feeling very often. And when it
Yeah.
happens, I'm like, I just can't wait to get back. And Seth will be like, yeah, that's how I feel every single day. Like you don't
Mhm.
get that missing feeling. So sometimes it's nice to have that separation, just to have that
Yeah.
feeling.
That reunion. Oh,
Yes.
it's so juicy.
Yes. All right. Guilt number T. Letter T.
T stands for trust yourself. So we kind of, I feel like we touched on this basically, but yeah, within you, deep down in your mum gut, your instinct, you have this like deep wisdom, and you know what's best for yourself and you know what's best for your children. And all the chaos of the world can kind of cloud that. But if you can tap into trusting yourself, and at the start, it can just be saying, I trust myself, I trust myself, I trust myself. But if you can do practices where you can go inward and you can, sit in stillness and feel into yourself and your gut, um, and have that deep trust within yourself, that kind of ties everything together for the guilt. So if you can be kind to yourself, understand your why, identify when you might be triggered, look for the good, and at the end of the day, just trust your damn self, then you can move through the feelings. And that's the whole thing. We're going to move through them and they're going to come back, and we're going to move through them and they're going to come back, just like waves at the beach. But as long as we can move through them and not be drowned by them, that is the key to success here.
I love that so much. I think these are honestly great. I think all 5 of these things are so crucial to being able to get through them. And yeah, I'm glad that you put this together. I think it's a really great list.
Thank you. I love teaching this at my workshops to my mums because it kind of resonates with everyone in a different way, but I feel like everyone can take something that they can be like, okay, I'll try this next time. When that feeling comes up, I'll just be kind, or whatever it is, remember my why. And then, I just hope that can help them through in those moments.
Yeah. Who do you normally work with, would you say?
So mums that are basically feeling like they're drained or lacking direction or haven't really, looked after themselves. I would say that's the most common mums that I work with. But any mums really, like we spoke about earlier, like this whole journey of motherhood is so intense and so new. Like, you've got to have time for yourself. You've got to, work on yourself and just try and be the best you can be, because you're going to blink, your kids will be 18 and it'll be like, where did I go? Like, what have I done as well? Like, I feel like we can, alongside our kids, really grow. And like you just said, a happy mum is a good mum. And so when we're achieving our dreams, or just acknowledging them and going after them, we're so much happier. So and it sets a good example for our kids too.
Totally. And would you say that it's somebody who, I definitely feel like it's somebody who's like, man, I really would love to do this thing, but I am drowning in motherhood and I just don't think it's possible. I feel like that for sure would be somebody that would be great to work with you. But what if it's somebody who's like, I'm drowning and I just have no idea. I don't have a goal for what I need to do and I don't know what I need to figure out. Like, would that be a good match too?
I think like we can definitely, all people need to kind of work with a life coach or work with me is like a want for something more, like knowing that there's something more out there, there's something more for you. You might not know what it is exactly, but you've just got this feeling that there's something more. It's hard to explain, but
no,
it's those people that magic can happen if you just reach out for that help and that guidance. I think sometimes there's there can be like a perception with life coaches that we're like all knowing and all experienced in life and our niche, and I'm just not claiming to be an expert in any way, not in motherhood, like even mothering my own child, I'm learning every day. But the beauty of life coaches is they can support you, guide you, ask you powerful questions, hold you accountable, like gently challenge you. Because you're the expert in your life and in yourself. And so that's the real beauty, is just having that person on board to help bring out the best in you and help you achieve like whatever it is that you want to achieve. So I love life coaching.
Totally. And just having you think about things in different perspective, and you've got the training to know how to move the needle. And I think that's amazing. Cool. So if anybody wants to connect with you, they can find you at sarahkate.coaching on Instagram or sarahkatecoaching.com.
Correct.
Awesome. Thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so good to chat with you. So thank you, Shayla.
All right. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you enjoyed it, please share with somebody you think would love. And I would be so honored if you would subscribe to the podcast and leave a comment and rating below so I can know what you guys are digging, what you want more of, just connect with you a little better. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.